Greetings, scholars. I'm talking to thinkers, innovators, co-creators, and creators of knowledge that add to existing or creating new knowledge that is not known at all. Welcome to today's session, wherever you are. I greet you. My name is King Costa, and we're going to be talking today in this Research Methods Masterclass. We're going to be addressing critical issues. The issue of research method, which is an issue that is critical in what you do in your studies. It's one of the most important components. As students always ask, for instance, why is there so much emphasis and requirement on research methods? One of the reasons research methods or the research methodology chapter itself carries so much weight in your investigation, it's because it is exactly what we look at to understand the soundness and believability of the conclusions that you make or of your study. So today, wherever you are, whether you are watching this on Facebook, whether you're watching it on YouTube, or wherever you are watching this conversation, and with some participants, we're going to be really going through some of the critical steps that are required in helping you to produce a believable research, sound research. And most of our work is based on our program that we developed, a pedagogy and an andragogy as well, that is aligned to it's called Costa model of research, and which is really a complementary approach to postgraduate supervision. And the model has, of necessity, 5 cardinal points, and these points are sequential, but as much as they are sequential, they are also interactive, very, very interactive. So you start at objectives. If you started at objectives, then you can go to situation. But we always emphasize that for the purpose of understanding research, it's important to start at the C station, because the C station deals with issues of concepts, and we're looking at concept ideas and how are these ideas taken from the abstract into the concrete or reduced to text, and how do you interpret these ideas. And when you talk about research, really it's all about ideas that are reduced from the abstract and made to be understandable. One of the things that we found was a stumbling block in postgraduate research was the inability of the students, particularly the novice researchers, to be able to decipher all these philosophical terms that are carried or contained within the research, what we can simply call research language. So the Costa model looks at doing that. And we do believe that once you get it right, once you get the foundational dynamics proper, it will be easy to go to your research proposal, which is actually what you're seeing on the slide there, standing for objective. The objective, what object, not research objective, but the overall overarching objective. What is it that you want to achieve? In other words, it relates to your plan, because your research proposal is a proposal of a plan of the things that you really want to do. So it helps you to actually fathom and be able to put that in place. But then we say it's also critical to be aware of what is happening around the topic that you have chosen, that you've been helped to actually create during the time of station 2, which was objectives. So awareness and understanding, comprehension and appreciation of what is happening around you, it's very, very important. And what is happening around the phenomena that you really want to investigate is also very, very critical. And what are the key theories, and who are the players, the gurus within your chosen area of investigation? Absolutely very, very critical. And then we got the text, the T, that stands for your methodology, which is what we are focusing on today. We are focusing on the T, the research methodology, because having done all these, without having a proper, sound, believable, and scientifically crafted methodology, your research will always be bringing doubts, and it will not be believable, and it will not meet quality criteria for validity and reliability. That is in relation to quantitative studies. And then when it comes to qualitative, it would be quality criteria for trustworthiness. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And really the assessment of impact is that the people that we train, we really want you at the end of the day to be words on legs. That's what one of my co-founding professors, Professor Lebisi, calls it, says you become words on legs. In other words, you become embodiment of your research. You get known, you are a master, you get consultant on that. People will come to you, they'll consult you to understand, to ask you to solve problems, because your research commands that kind of authority. The work, the amount, the commitment you put in your research calls for that kind of expertise on your particular area of research. And basically, really, ladies and gentlemen, research, what we need to understand, first of all, is these 4 dimensions. We need to understand what is the role of these philosophical dimensions onto your research. The first one being ontology, and ontology really referring to reality. But we'll get into that and understand how many realities are at play within scientific research or investigations. And then we look at epistemology. It's a science of knowledge that tends to substantiate or justify how we know the reality, which is the ontology that we've claimed at the stage 1 that you are seeing. And then stage 3 is axiology, your values, absolutely critical, because there are realities that are value detached. There are realities that allow you to be part of that. So there's attachment of values. But methodology, which is what we're focusing on today, is absolutely critical, because then it is a method that shows how you got to know what you say you know. Welcome everybody that is coming in, and just enjoy the ride as it goes. You find myself, I'm already running because we started at 7. I just want to keep time and see if I'm able to answer your requests either here online or on Facebook, for those that are watching from that space, or YouTube as well. So, and then how do we do that? Most of you already see the slide. And what we do really, after having covered the underpinning or basic foundational dynamics of research language and concepts, applicable concepts, we do this through means of colloquia or online learning programs or one-to-one coaching that we do with our students who are doing masters and PhD. And also this kind of a platform, because COVID-19 has actually pushed us this direction, saying the world is digitalized or digitized. So we've got to just move on. So we are there now. So we'll be doing this kind of programs running online. Let me just not waste time and talk about one of the most important foundations of research, which is epistemology. Epistemology has got 4 dimensions. But as I said earlier, epistemology is a science of knowledge that shows or reflects how we know what we say we know. That's number 1. And number 2, what's your relationship between, or what's the relationship between the knower and the known? So that, to be able to answer that, you've got about 4 quadrants that you see here. First being authoritative epistemology, useful for collecting your references and citations. It's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that when you put up your references, you look for key players in your area of investigation. Do not look for obscure people that are not actually known, but look for key players to make your argument to be much, much more sound. So that's authoritative epistemology, as well as where you get these sources from. What kind of journals do they come from? Is it a credible journal? Is not a credible journal? What is a credible journal? Is a journal that is well accepted and accredited in other areas, and with the editorial board that is known. But let me tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, even the predatory journals, they are able to take names of respected authors and scientists and put them on their list as if they are actually part of that, when those authors and those scientists, those editors actually are not even aware that they are listed on these. So it's absolutely critical. In one of the seminars that you're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at that. How do you detect credible versus those that are not credible? But today we're just focusing on epistemology in this part of the presentation. And I'm saying there's authoritative epistemology, which is useful for your literature review, for support of what you say. I'm saying to students all the time, when you make a claim, have some foundation for that claim. It cannot just come out of you. Even if it were intuitive, which you're gonna see now, intuitive epistemology, but it also still needs to have some kind of support, logical support, so as to say. And then logical epistemology, on the other hand, as you can see, it's useful for reasoning and defense of logic. And we're talking here about the three main logics that Saunders calls it approach. You know, intuitive or what, not intuitive rather, but deductive logic or deductive reasoning, and then inductive logic or inductive reasoning, and then the third one being abductive, and they will go together with their paradigms, as you're going to be seeing. The empirical epistemology is where now you as a researcher, you are able to actually engage with procedural activities to then provide claims of what your experience was as you were doing what you were doing, particularly when you're doing an investigation, could be interacting with your participants. So what came out of that? So that would give you more of empirical epistemology. But without waste of time, again, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to quickly move to the influence of ontology on research designs. All right, the influence the ontology has on designs. So I'm going to be looking at that, and you will see that we've got on the left-hand side these sections that are listed as your paradigm, and then your reality, and then the approach and the influence. Let me just fix that part of the slide. Let me just fix that part of the slide briefly, if you may allow me to fix that part, because I wanted to read influence of ontology, influence of ontology on, or of ontologies on your research, because that's very, very critical. And I want it to read the way it actually has to read. So it's influence of ontology, influence of, right? Influence of ontology, right? I've got it there. So I'm going to get my slide back. All right, let me get my slide back. Let me get my slide back now and start sharing it. Sorry for that interruption. I always want to make sure that things are upright. I believe in upright things. I don't want things that are not upright. So any small thing that is not written properly does disturb me to a certain extent. So there you are. So we've got influence of ontology on research designs. So we're going to look at a number of these ontologies or realities and see how they affect your results, your designs. How do you say at the end of the day, this is my ontological position? So the first paradigm that you see here is the paradigm that is within the positivist belief, and I'll show you the fathers of these, how these were founded. So the positivism believes that there is one single reality, and that reality is objective, whereas interpretivism believes that there are multiple perspectives, and these perspectives are perspectives of you as a researcher and your participants. And really, pragmatism looks at what is practical, and it believes that reality is constantly changing and is negotiable. Now, having seen these paradigms, and you'll see we start with the blue column that goes down here, represents positivism. And this is the first, one of the most trusted or originally trusted methods of inquiry, and it originates or it's within natural science. So it's one that has always been believed, and it has got its own logic, which is deductive. It uses deductive reasoning approaches, and then interpretivism uses inductive reasoning, and then pragmatism really uses both, is abductive. It's always looking at what works and what is the fit for the time. Now, remember, deductive reasoning talks about a method of reasoning that flows from a known position or proposition or suppositions, a known theory. So it flows from that theory, and then it goes down to what can actually be observed as a result of that theory. It believes that certain things are explainable through particular theories, whereas inductive starts by you observing to formulate a theory. So these really do not necessarily have to be separated, as you will see when we talk more about the pragmatism, which relates to the methods that we're going to be showing here, the methods which are really mixed. So whereas positivism looks at quantitative methods, and it says that reasoning you test hypotheses here. It's top-down approach. So from a theory and then down towards to a premise, and then to what you call observation. With inductive, you start by observing certain things as you interact with these participants, and you're observing certain behaviors in relation to what you are actually researching, and you end up formulating a theory. So when a theory is formulated, interpretivism is good for theory formulation, and positivism is good for theory testing, right? And then this is when you want to use both methods to strengthen your argument. If you've got a particular area of inquiry whereby you use different types of paradigms, and they gave you a new paradigm, very recent in relation to these others, and that solves the problem with the best possible tools available at the time that problem needs to be solved. So we then get to designs, but I just want to take you back. Look, this is the flow of your research methods. You would start somewhere with a paradigm, and a paradigm is sometimes referred to as your philosophical assumption, or it's sometimes referred to as your worldview, or sometimes you say the researcher's lens for inquiry. Sometimes you say it is the tradition of inquiry. So all those, they refer to one thing, that little box over there. And then it's followed by, when you talk about that box, already you are touching on the type of reality that influences your investigation. And then you now show that what logic are you going to use to come up to make your inquiry, and what methods are applicable or suitable for your research question and for your research inquiry, and what design or strategy are you going to use. In quantitative, particularly within social sciences, the surveys are much popular, but then you also got correlational studies, whereby you're going to be doing regression analysis and coming up with a p-value. And actually what you'll be coming up as well is inferential statistics. So you can actually do that. But in qualitative research, we've got multi-methods. So there is quite a number of methods that the researcher needs to choose and say which one of these methods is suitable for responding to my type of question. I'm not sure whether there was a question here or not. Is there a question? Or are the participants locked outside? All right, this platform I'm not able to see as well. So that's fine. Let me continue then. So I was saying, when you come to to interpretivism, The complexity is because of multi-methods that are there, and you being able to understand which method you need. So you really, really need to get a grasp on these methods so that you understand which one is suitable for a particular question. Because all of them, particularly the main five methods that are used in a research, particular academic research, within interpretivism, they actually are, they're suitable for different types of questions, different settings, and different types of inquiries. Now, if you want to use mixed methods, then that means you'd use any of these, one of these plus any of these, just to be able to answer a question. Now let's get a little into these. There's multi-methods. Popular one, first one that is much known is the case studies. That really, if there isn't much information about a particular phenomenon and you want to get thick, rich descriptions, or you really want to get deeper insights into the cases or a case that you are looking at. So case studies would help you to explore that phenomena. So it's for exploration. And then when you get to phenomenology, phenomenology is if you want to understand the lived experiences. Right now during COVID, there will be many people who write studies, phenomenological studies on the effects or lived experiences of COVID-19. There's a study I'm working with one of my associate doctors, and we're working on the lived experiences of employees at the outbreak of COVID-19 in South Africa. So phenomenology is looking for lived experience. Every time you are thinking you want to understand the experiences of a particular group of people, so you already thinking of phenomenology, because then what you're going to reflect there is what the experiences were and how the experiences were experienced. How the experiences were, how did they go through this experience? And the interpretation should be that of participants, not that of yours. That is why it's important. It's not a narrative study. The difference with the narrative study, you are going to be narrating what your participant is telling you. I'm saying paint because all the time, usually narrative study, you'd be looking at the life story of a person, but it could be a story, it could be stories of different people within a particular phenomenon. For instance, you could be interviewing people and say how it was for you to be at the forefront of fighting COVID-19. Could be the doctors, could be nurses, those that are in healthcare. So you could actually narrate their stories or narrate a story of one person most popularly. But with phenomenology, you are not really narrating. You are actually transmitting what they are saying as is. And that comes out, your analysis will find the underlying issues that are in what you've transcribed from what your participants have actually said. Then you've got the ethnographic study as well. The ethnographic, as you can see the word ethno, it looks for a particular group, and it's one of the most longest studies, so that's why it's not popular in academic research, but it's popular in business research, because businesses, when they've got a new product, they always want to know the behavior of a particular targeted market, how they behave, their behavior types, their what makes them buy the product, and how do they actually how do they relate to that particular product. So in business research, you will see ethnographic research, but even in anthropology, you will still see ethnographic research where you're looking for cultural perspectives of a particular group and cultural dynamics, even including, for instance, COVID-19. Different groups of people, particularly here in Africa and South Africa, there are rich cultural heritage and interpretations of a particular people, of a particular area or particular country. Then you come to grounded theory. I love grounded theory because the year it was founded is the year I was born. So there's so much relationship between me and grounded theory, but it's also one of those almost longitudinal, but not longitudinal study. It's still a cross-sectional study, but it's almost longitudinal. And I will get back into it later on, but most students don't go through that. Now, after having talked about multi-methods, so now, and I move to mixed methods, and then I'm saying with mixed methods, so I've gone through all, now I'm here. With mixed methods will be always orientated within the pragmatism philosophy and using abductive reasoning or approach, which means it's using whatever is working within acceptable methods of inquiry in science to come to your conclusions. And so mixed methods means that you could use any of the 5 methods. Could be a case study with a survey, or you could actually be doing a correlational study on the side. For instance, you want to understand the relationship between feelings or between their fears, I'm talking about employees with COVID-19, and their income, the side. So you want to do a correlational study there. Or you could want to do a survey research as well, where you extend that understanding at a broader dimension as well. So you could use a survey and a case study or a phenomenology. In our situation, we've used a phenomenology and a survey research, for instance. Now, when we talk about mixed methods, there are different types of mixed methods. First of all, there are equal status mixed methods. In other words, you put so much time on qualitative inquiry and quantitative inquiry. And that would go much deeper into studies like your correlational research, where you put so much in the quantitative plus the qualitative. So it's equal status mixed methods. But then you've got the ones that are not equal status, which is more into qualitative research, but uses as well quantitative dimension just to add credence and credibility to your study. That's what you call triangulation, but you are triangulating outside the paradigms. You can still triangulate within just the paradigms, but triangulating outside, you are actually strengthening your research. So when you see this notation, and I'll explain the notation just after a few minutes, because I'm going to put up a slide that explains this notation. But this indicates that qualitative research is the core of your study, and it happens at the same time with quantitative research. That is why you've got a positive sign there. So it happens at the same time with your quantitative research. So that means, therefore, it is a qualitative research core and quantitative research supplemental, but it happens at the same time using inductive. So it's inductive. It's an inductive type of research, but it happens at the same time. Okay, this one is inductive sequential because it's still qualitative research, but this arrow means that we start with the qualitative inquiry and then use the results that come out of the quantitative the qualitative to inform the quantitative. So you start like we started with phenomenology. We met with the participants, we designed the questionnaire, so we met with the participants, interviewed them, came, analyzed their research, and what came out informed what we need to get further out there. So it's a quantitative still core, but it's sequential. This one is at the same time. So it's simultaneous, inductive simultaneous, inductive sequential, when you see those notations. And these two notations here that you are seeing, that thing just ran. These two notations here you are seeing, if your study is more onto quantitative and less on qualitative. So this notation here is quantitative, that means deductive simultaneous, and it means it's quantitative, but the logic that is used is deductive simultaneous. And then you've got the quantitative, which is qual, referring to quantitative. Okay, I'm disturbed by something. I think somebody wants to ask a question. Let's hear. And Ntokozo, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure. I think there's participants logged out somewhere, but we've upgraded the system, so it's also confusing to me. Let me continue. If it has to happen, they'll get the recording. Let me continue then, right? So then I'm moving on, and I'm moving on then. So I was here, and I was saying these notations are critical to explain the choice that you've taken, even within mixed methods. So remember, I've talked about the one paradigm, which is within the positives and the positivism, and then another paradigm, which is within the interpretivism. That's where I explained multi-methods, and now I'm explaining mixed methods. Really, multi-methods and mixed methods are not the same thing. And also, the term here, multi-methods here, is not necessarily indicative of the fact that you are going to be now using case study and a phenomenology. That's when we hear that. But I put here to explain that methods are, there's multiple of methods. Maybe I should have used multiple methods, because multi-methods, as it's known, is when you are doing two studies. But in this presentation here, it's not indicative of that. It's indicative of those many methods that I have actually shown. Right. Now, let's go back to this paradigm and see the origin. First, the word paradigm. The word paradigm originates from one of the greatest psychologists, educational psychologists, that was called Thomas Kuhn in 1970. Other studies also show his work from as early as 1962. And he's the one who came up with the word paradigm to explain the way people view things. So even today, when we talk about paradigm shift, we are talking about you changing your worldview, how you see things. And then we've got another paradigm, which is positivism. And this one is the oldest one that is traced back from, it was founded by a man called Auguste Comte. I don't even know how to pronounce that name. Auguste Comte, right? Who was born between, or who lived between 1798 and 1857. He is known as the father of positivism, and he created methods of inquiry within the world or the dimensions of chemistry, the dimensions of biology, the dimensions of geography, the dimensions of all natural science, as we know it, physical science. So he created those, and the dimensions or the methods were very trustworthy, as they still are today. As a matter of fact, even today, we still have a lot of people who claim that our methods, and I'm saying our because I'm mostly into qualitative and then a little into quantitative, or you might describe me as a mixed methods enthusiast. So the claims that come out are that interpretivism, it's hard to demonstrate rigor in it. So with this positivism, there are methods that are established to demonstrate rigor, which is validity and reliability. Now, with the paradigm of pragmatism, it's fairly new. And it started within the beginning of the century that we are in the United States. So, and you can see the authors there. And then the one for interpretivism can be linked back to people like Max Weber, you know, the German sociologist, and then Husserl, the ones that came after him. And it can be linked to phenomenology. Again, phenomenology this time as a philosophy. I know that might confuse you. As a philosophy, not as one of the research strategies that we are talking about here. So it's one of those that students could be confused. But once you get into this and need to grip with it, you will know when to use, you know what, how do you use phenomenology as a philosophy, and why it is used also to be able to make inquiry. Now, I talked to you about that mixed methods and how we're going to actually deal with that. Okay, so I want to get to it now. Oh, before I go to mixed methods as well, if you look at the slide on top there, when you write about every step of your research, as you see in the next session, it's important to know the key players in research methodology, trusted names like Saunders, like Creswell, like, Kuthari, like Peyton, like Newman, like Lincoln and Guba. No, those are trusted words, names, and that shows that you really do read. Here is something that I must say. When you write your research, it's important that in terms of your argument, you are able to quote latest citations. You can see, at least for me, Creswell has got a book, the same book, another edition that was released last year. And Creswell, I'm talking about Saunders, who wrote the Research Onion. But with Creswell as well, I believe there should be another edition that is here. These guys are critical for substantiating and justifying your claim of your methodological approach, but not necessarily for the argument in relation to your question. Now, I must restate this, because with the theorists, a theory can be developed over a long period. For instance, if you talk about grounded theory, you don't even want to know how old I am. I'm almost a century myself, perhaps half a century. That's when grounded theory was founded. And if you heard a situation like up here that says, when was this method established? So obviously you will quote 1967, but you need to be able to say, how has that developed over the years and where it is now? That shows that you know what you are doing. Scholars like just to cite for the sake of citing, but you need a discussion in your citation. Right. Now, just to finalize the previous slide, so I want to get to approaches to mixed method, as I mentioned. So these are the theoretical notations. As I said before, qual plus quant means that it's inductive simultaneous. It happens at the same time. When you go to collect data collection through a chosen method within qualitative studies, like maybe a case study or phenomenology, when you go to meet your participants to collect data, then you did the same thing as well with the quantitative research. So it is inductive simultaneous, because it's driven more by inductive logic, and your quantitative is only supplemental. That is now your design typology. So as you get these slides, at least you understand how that is done. Right. Okay, let me do this now. Stop the recording and then re-record again for those that might want to listen.